Hello everyone, my name is Blackwatch and welcome to the first episode of the new and improved How to Play series. And this week we're taking a look at an operator who's near and dear to my heart, Mr. Seamus Cowden, also known as Sledge. The only Scotsman on the team, unfortunately not voiced by a Scotsman, but we have plenty of other gripes in the world, why focus on this one? And he is a 2 armour, 2 speed operator on the attacking side. He has access to 2 primary weapons, the L85A2 assault rifle, which 100% would recommend as your bread and butter weapon for him. Decent accuracy, decent damage, very comfortable gun to use, very good for beginners. And the alternative to that is the shotgun that he has, the M59A1 or something like that. It's basically a massive big breaching shotgun. It's one of the better pump actions in the game, and if you want to take a shotgun, you're not going to be too let down by this. But I would recommend leaving it behind unless you're going for memes, because you don't have a competent backup, because unfortunately you have the P226 in your pocket as a pistol, and it's not great. It's okay, but it's not great. Gone are the days of Sledge running around with an SMG-11 that was more than competent as a primary secondary weapon. So, go with that AR, and if you're talking about your secondary gadgets, there's really only one option that you want to stick with old Sledgy boy, and that is the frag grenades, because he's one of the few operators who can take frag grenades. You don't want to miss out on this. Stuns, yeah, they're good since they had the buff. It's not going to replace frags, especially not for Sledge, because as you'll find out later on in the video, he's got a lot of opportunities to use them very creatively. Now, for his primary gadget, his unique gadget, you have the tactical breaching hammer, also known as the caber. Now this thing is exactly what it sounds like, but a bit more. So if you're thinking about the average person using a sledgehammer to open a door, what do you think of? You think of them smacking the lock and the lock giving way, or hitting the hinges and the door just falling in. Now ignore that image and instead think of a plain plaster wall that's nice and fresh, and workmen spent ages working on this, and then all of a sudden this massive, over 6'5", I think, guy comes in, one swing at it, and an entire, let's say 2x2 square is knocked out of nowhere. Now, it's not quite as big as that, but it's pretty damn big for someone with some pretty big arms. This hole will be enough for you to vault through, or enough for you to crouch through, depending on where you place it on the wall, but in any case it goes through any soft surface. That includes ceilings, if you can reach them, and floors, if you're standing on them. So if you hit through the floor, obviously you're not going to destroy the metal bars, but you will destroy the flooring itself. Hatches go in one swing, barricades, castle barricades, barbed wire, all those kinds of things do not stand up to even a single swing from the hammer. And this includes bulletproof gadgets, so if you have any bulletproof gadgets that you run into, like your maestro cams, like your bulletproof cameras, which are about as on the nose bulletproof as you could possibly ask for, one swing from this and it is kaput, and so it's pretty nice. Deployable shields as well, cheeky wee counter to that. So when you're using Sledge, one of the main things that you're going to find is that in terms of his strengths, he shreds any soft surface and is a specialist when it comes to going top down. When you have Buck, yeah, he can do the through the floor stuff, but it's just not quite the same as Sledge, at least when it comes to you standing and looking down. Sledge can do it much more quickly, he can do it much more cleanly, much more efficiently. Buck tends to use a lot more ammunition, and a lot of the time the hole that opens up isn't going to be as clean as you'd want it to be. Sightlines aren't going to be as useful. As a result, you're better focusing on him being underneath, firing up, which is what Sledge can't do. Sledge also is great for teams that are heavy on their deployable gadgets, their bulletproof gadgets. If you've got a team that is really enjoying using lots of, sorry for the voice work there, really enjoying using lots of castles and barbed wire and all that kind of stuff, Sledge is your man. He'll clear it up fast, he'll clear it up with relative safety. Obviously it's always a risk to come up to something when it's requiring you to be in pretty much exact proximity with that gadget for you to destroy it, but he's a big guy, he's very capable, and you're not stuck with your pants down for too long if you do go for the swing. The weaknesses that Sledge presents are fairly minimal, mainly due to the proximity and the nature of his gadget, with it being something that replaces his gun for a moment. So rather than it being an equipable weapon, the gadget basically works where you hold down the button, and if you're holding the button, it's ready to swing, and when you release the button, it will swing, or if you tap it, it'll just do the full function, all in one. This renders you pretty much harmless to anyone unless they're staring you in the face, because you can knock some heads in with this thing. Wouldn't recommend it unless you're really feeling fancy. But when you're using it, you need to really consider where you are, who's around you, do you have any teammates to cover you, and the moment they hear the hammer swinging on something, and the hammer is quite a distinctive sound, they're going to know that you're vulnerable for at least another few seconds whilst you're putting the thing back in your back. It's not a massive disadvantage, but it is just something to consider when you're using Sledge. You don't want to be caught with the hammer in your hand and you're just staring at them as they look at you whilst you're doing some ungodly things with that mighty beast wriggling in your hand. So, those are your strengths and weaknesses. In terms of tips with Sledge, if you're going to be smacking holes in the floor, my best recommendation would be to immediately listen out for footprints or footsteps. If you hear someone scrambling after you've hit the ceiling, the likelihood is that, or I keep saying hit the ceiling and hit the floor and I'm alternating. If you've hit the floor and someone looks up at the ceiling upon which you're standing, then that's your opportunity to send them scattering. And if you hear them scattering, move. Try to listen to the footsteps as they move along and reposition to that position. You want to put as much pressure on them as possible, because one of your greatest strengths isn't just opening holes and then firing down on people. It's opening so many holes that the operator who's below has no option but to have one eye on the ceiling and one eye on their normal horizontal proximity, so people pushing into the room, that kind of stuff. It's going to force them to split their attention, and hopefully it's going to enable your teammates to be pushing into an operator who's just not equipped to deal with the aggression they're receiving, because they have to constantly think, is he going to be on this bit? Can I safely stand on this angle that I like to hold? And that's the thing that you really need to think about. You need to put yourself in the shoes, yes, of the defender, and try to picture yourself in that scenario. Where would you be standing? Where would you like to hold an angle? Are there any specific spots where, let's say, there's going to be gadgets defending a wall? If you're dealing with a bandit and you're on kitchen and it's on cafe, that's a perfect example of where you can go upstairs into mining, smack a couple of holes in the floor, all of a sudden those bandit batteries are exposed and there's nothing they can do to stop you from taking them out, and suddenly your push is much more effective because you don't have to deal with any breach denial anymore. And these are the things that they then have to think about. Other thing to listen for, if you start opening holes, I'd say not normally after the first one, but you can, depending on the position that the person's in, how reactive they are, but usually after the second hole you make, if someone underneath you has a C4, that's when they're going to start thinking about using that C4, because they want to dial in your position. I say that there's going to be that hesitation, there isn't always, but the hesitation is usually because they don't want to throw away the one-time use gadget they have on a position that you might not be in. So they might take that minute to try and zone you out, figure out your position, and then predict where you're going to be next. So listen for the sound. It's a very distinctive sound when nitrocell gets taken out of the pocket. It's the sound of duct tape ripping off of someone's glove. You'll have heard it so many times if you played the game before. If you haven't played the game, it's a very unnatural, out of place sound. It's just the sound of, as I say, tape ripping. That's when you know, right, someone's going to throw a nitro, I gotta get clear. In that event, run to any hard floor that's near you, or just try to stay away from the holes you've been making. The closer you are to the holes, the more likely you are to be a target. Another thing with Sledge is that, remember, you don't always have to make a hole. Sometimes you'll be in situations where it's very tempting to just take out the wall that you're standing next to. But it's not always going to be necessary, because the line of sight that you're creating isn't just going to be used by you, and the last thing you want is for some roamer that you weren't anticipating to then take advantage of the line of sight or the rotation that you've created. Sometimes a castle barricade in the wrong place for the defending team can be just as bad as it is for you when you're pushing in, because if you manage to get in without destroying it, and then someone's main rotation path back to the objective that you managed to secure is through that barricade, and you leave it alone rather than going full sledgy time and knocking it out, that's a huge advantage for you, because they have to either try to knock it down, which takes a lot of time, or manually rip it down, which is pretty much a guaranteed death sentence. Any of those scenarios leads to victory for you and death to the enemy, and that's what you want in all times in Siege. So those are my main tips for him. I'd say the last one that is a really cheeky, doesn't always work, but if you're feeling fancy, it's kind of funny tip, is to throw a frag grenade on a piece of floor paneling that you know is definitely bars, and basically immediately hammer the position that you've put that frag grenade on, and if you're lucky, if you're very cheeky, if you're standing right above someone, the grenade will fall through the hole you've then just created whilst live, and it'll drop through, and if there happens to be someone below you, it's going to kill them before they even have a chance to react. Very funny, death from above, huge bomber plane, Scottish nasty man, arms making holes, making explosions, making very sad families because they're going to have to say goodbye to their son or daughter or whoever. But that's not for you to be concerned with, you know, you're playing a game, so just kill the guy and be happy with it. So, I hope you enjoyed the guide. Short and sweet. I don't want to be messing you guys about. A lot of videos that I've done lately have been a little bit bloated, and it's because I need to tighten up my style, so this is one of my first attempts to do it. There's going to be timestamps as always in the description and elsewhere. If you have any feedback about the video, things you liked, things you didn't, please let me know, and I'll be sure to take it into account. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to drop a like, subscribe, and just in case you're curious, just in case you care, I'm going to be doing this series as a regular thing, hopefully each week, but you know, life gets in the way, but I will be keeping it as regular as I possibly can, and it's going to be alternating between attack 1 week, defense 1 week, and we're going to be going just straight through the operators from release to now and beyond. And so it's going to take a lot of time, but it's going to give you a clear indication of what is coming and what to expect from yon PRD Blackwatch in the future. So I hope you enjoyed. Take care, everybody. Welcome to 2022. Do svidania. Bye bye.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of us. Ammo reserves are low.
Killing spree. Ballista. Double kill. Ballista.